Hello, thanks so much for watching. Elise makes a bunch of videos. Today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Jordan Peterson. A friend of mine sent me a link to one of his discussions, and then I ended up getting into the podcast that he did with Joe Rogan, which is super interesting. I'll have a link to that if you haven't already seen it somehow. Love Joe Rogan. He's always got amazing guests and just really interesting stuff that he talks about. So with this, like Jordan Peterson, I was sort of like watching a bunch of his videos, and all of his super short sort of media stuff seems to be like the stuff going viral has all to do with just like these little minute ridiculous logical moral value points and gets like super political with stuff. Like he uses a lot of political examples, but it's interesting because he just keeps saying like, I'm actually not trying to profess any sort of like political point, like party, or like not making alliances with any sort of like I particular party line thing. Like it's just like he's just got this sort of like exacting moral value, like personal moral values, and when people start questioning things, he's really looking behind all of it and coming up with some really thoughtful answers. And I think a lot of people are just trying to like make little sound clips of like things that are sensational or controversial or whatever, getting offended for silly reasons. But yeah, he's like got some really interesting things to say. I'm really interested in this book um, that he was promoting there, and I find that he's just like really trying to spread a pretty simple message, but obviously getting into some really insane sort of details and psychology behind why all these things that we've heard before, with a lot of sort of like personal development, life coach, spiritual leader, all these things. Like it's basically just so simple in the end, but then his explanations and the reasons behind make it seem really complicated for people who don't want to like use their brains and think about things. But super interesting if you do like using your brain and thinking about things. So if you're interested in thinking about things and using your brain, I would check out his videos for sure. Otherwise, you probably will just be like, oh, this is really boring. Yeah, so like the main message is just like so simple. It's just like, be the change that you want to see. Like, it's not about everything else. The answers are not external, they're not like out there, they're inside. They're like an internal thing. Most of the answers to most people's things, any issue or problem or complaint that they might have, really at the end of the day it comes down to like what are you going to do about it. It's not up to everyone else. Like blaming the situation and all these things, none of that is helping. What you really need to do is just like figure out yourself what's going on, what's the problem with yourself that's causing whatever it is, and then like fix that. And it's just about like sort of incremental improvements. I think a lot of people just struggle with that first part, which is just like actually acknowledging the problem and being honest about what's happening and actually having a conversation about the things that are wrong and like acknowledging that there's things that are wrong. And I think that's why people are getting really offended in some cases, because it's like, here's a problem. And then like this guy is just like, well, I'm not just going to ignore that. Let's talk about it. What's the actual problem behind the problem behind the problem? Like what's the actual fundamental problem here? And most people don't want to dig that deep in. So, yeah, it's just really interesting stuff to say. And it's basically, yeah, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Like it's very cliche, but when you dig it down, it's like every single person, all of the actions and thoughts and things that they do ultimately all connects and all actually matters. So if you think that like there's a problem in the world and you're doing nothing about it, then you're adding to it, right? So like it's as simple as that. Like we don't want to admit that, because then you're like, oh, I'm not the problem. But it's like, yeah, you are. Like I know I like There are things that I would want to see better in the world and like literally probably doing nothing about them. But like I'm not saying it's the world's problem, I'm saying it's my problem. So that's like a slight difference. And in terms of just like personal development, some examples for me is just like when I was unemployed and I had sort of an opportunity because I was on like unemployment assistance. So I had this opportunity to get training paid for by the government. When I was talking to the unemployment office, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, there's this papers that you have to fill out," and literally like a stack of papers and forms and all these things that you need to get this free schooling. And it was like, oh god, when you look at the whole stack, you're like, that is impossible. But it's just like anything, like step by step, you do like little by little, and then magically, like a month or two later, I had the whole thing done, got it approved, got my like school paid for, got my accounting education, which has definitely helped me in my life. And it was just like one of those things where, yeah, like every single day, I kind of was like, okay, what more do I need to do to get this freaking stack of papers done? Like you just kind of like have to do it. And I think that's why for me, with my personal goals and like life focus, I really try to focus on health because there are so many things that shift in my life with the way that I travel and change jobs and blah 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 blah. As long as I'm always conscious of the fact that like my personal fitness and nutrition is my responsibility and it's something that is constantly like something that I'm trying to improve, then even if I have nothing else, even if I have no job, no like plan or anything, at least I have that to start with, right? So it was just like my New Zealand trip when I was starting to think about it and saying like, yeah, like I really want to do this. I was in Mexico at the time, and I was like, okay, when I get home, I'm gonna have to get like my medical stuff, start getting the paperwork, look at flights, insurance, like all these things that needed to happen. And at the beginning, seemed like, oh my god, how am I gonna get all this done? But then, you know, you like just do it incrementally, and like with any goal, you gotta like chip away at it with what you can actually accomplish within like a day or an hour or even like a few minutes sometimes, and just continue to go for like the ultimate goal of whatever it is. So that's sort of like the main message of the Jordan Peterson sort of things is just like personal responsibility. And I think a lot of people like motivational speakers and like spiritual leaders, even in the end, when people are asking about these huge questions about like racism and all these things and happiness and love and whatever, it's always like, okay, you have to look within for the answers of these questions. Like, I can tell you things that have helped me and others, but in the end, you have to have this conversation with yourself. So, yeah, that's the main thing. And hope you enjoyed the video. And like, subscribe, share, comment below. Either way, peace and love.